So welcome back to Yerushalmi Maasrot. Thank one of our pillars of the day who sponsored my drink today, who wishes to remain anonymous. The share is Lila Nishmat, my dear father, Cohen, whose yahrzeit is this Shabbos. As Chosa Yagen Aleinu, Kafei Amud Beis. So we are third perek, yeah? So now, we've spoken about, what do? You've got a doubt whether Truma Gedola was already separated in the field. We're talking about cases where you're sure Truma Gedola has been separated in the field. So Ad Kadun, until now we know there are various conditions. I mean, the Brisa talks about Dava She'en La Goren. We're talking about types of figs, right? And we're talking about the type of figs where the Gemar Malacha is done by putting a whole bundle in the Goren area where you do the threshing there. And these fruits, you don't normally separate Truma Gedola there until you bring it in the house. Ava Dava She'esh La Goren. Now fruit where the Gemar Malacha is done in the Goren area, like grain, so usually you would separate Truma out there, right? Even though it's your intention to bring it in the house. Remember, bringing in the house is one of the main things Kaveh Maasrot, right? But here your intention is you're going to do the Gemar Malacha in the granary, in the area there in the field. Now, if you find these fruits, Mafrishin Trumas Maser, you separate Trumas Maser from it, but inside lavish Truma Gedola. You don't say Truma Gedola. Why? You rely on the fact that Truma Gedola was already separated. Right? Since you're not going to be separating Truma Gedola now, you don't need all the various conditions. He says here, Truma Gedola was set already. You don't have to worry, or maybe Truma Gedola was not taken. You understand? With all the sfeikas and all, you don't have to worry about that. Truma Gedola would have been taken. That was Kaveh Maser. Now this fruit is Tebel. Whether you're going to sell it in the market, you're going to bring it in the house, you cannot eat from it temporary without taking Maser now. And that's what you need to do. Now we bring a raya from the Brisa that when you have fruit which has reached its Gemar Malacha is when it's in the Goren area, and therefore you would take Truma before you move it away. Ka'adada Tani, like we've learned, you find fruits which has all been smoothed out into the pile in the field, and that's Gemar Malacha. If it was Mechunasin, if the fruit was gathered together, Asrim Shum Gezel. If you take it, you're over on stealing. If it was Mefuzarin, if it was scattered, Mutarin Shum Gezel. They wouldn't have been left there like that intentionally. So if they're scattered, it's mutter. There's no problem with stealing it. Be'enkach or be'enkach. Now, whatever happens, chayovim b'maasrot, you do have to separate maasrot. So p'turin with Truma Gedola. Truma Gedola you don't have to set. Why? Take she'iyah shelegoren she'teyaket. There's no way this grain is going to be in the threshing area. It's not going to be moved from its place. And then came nisruma unless they took Truma first. So they definitely took Truma first. So you don't have to go and take Truma again. Okay. What do we see from here? Fruit where it's Gemar Malacha is by putting it in the Goren, gathering it together. They must have taken Truma at that stage before they moved it across, and therefore you have a right to what we were saying. Now the Gemara actually concludes. We said that Truma Gedola is taken out in the Goren. Maasrot mehecha nitales. Where are the maasrot normally taken? Min habayis or min hasada? And where do people separate maasrot usually when the fruit is in the field? Is it in the field before you bring it in the house? Or maybe you'll take the maasrot, until you bring it. What? You got a problem there? What? Yeah. Where do you take the maasrot? Are you going to take that in the field as well? Or are you going to wait till? You have a chiyuv when you come to the house, but maybe they'll take it out in the field, or is it you wait till you actually bring it in the house? He says, yeah, they'll take truma in the goren, but what is the minig about maser? Right, maser rishon, maser sheni. Do we say, well, they'll do it early in the field before they see panei habayis, and you wouldn't bring it in the house without taking maser? Maybe you'll leave it to take Maaseh later on after you bring it in the house. So let's see. We learn from the following. Because Chaver, someone who's trustworthy on Maaseh, Shemes, he died. V'niach Megura, he leaves his storehouse, Malea Peres full of fruit. Did he take Maaseh? Did he not take Maaseh? Afilu Baba Yomech Lisan, he brought them in that day. You can assume he must have taken Maaseh. He would not allow such a thing in the house without taking Maaseh. And the reason is because you always take maasrot in the field before you bring them in the house. The Megura here, this storehouse is in the house. He must have taken maaseh. Don't tell me the reason is because he takes pay. After he brings it in the house. No, he must have. And if he didn't manage to do it before he died, he would have commanded someone in the household, make sure you take maasrot. But because otherwise, but maybe you could suggest mitzvot sha'achas. Maybe you should be worried. Oh, he went mad for an hour before he died, and therefore he couldn't command anyone to take Maaseh. It must be, you have to say, why we assume the Peres are all Mesukanim, because he would do it normally in the field. That's when they would take Maaseh before you bring in the house. Had they not taken Maaseh, they wouldn't be brought into the house at all. So that's the answer to the Gemara's question. So basically, Maasros they also used to take in the field. Right? They wouldn't wait till they bring it in the house. But Amri Bibun here, he said no. Tifto took my case. Shemeis b'tach Yishub. He died basically with a clear mind. It could be the Peres. Maybe he was quiet, and the Peres would have taken Maaseh in the house. He never commanded anyone. You can't prove that they would do it in the field. Maybe he had a clear head, he brought them in the house, and they do it in the house. Yeah. And he commanded, and he did it in the house. He didn't go an hour without thinking. He learned the answer to the Gemara's question from the following. Now, it talks about Gamliel was going on a boat. And remember, this is referred to in Bavli. And he remembers, he has to do Biur Maasros. Get rid of the Maasros in his fruit in his house. And he's on a boat before this man Biur. And he has to give a name to Maasros. And he has to give over the Maasros to anyone who can receive them. Rabbi Gamliel said, Isu, 1/10 of the grain, which I'm going to measure out for Maaseh Ani is given, Nasan Lakiva ben Yosef, who's the treasurer for Tzedakah. He should acquire it for the poor. We see a raya from here that you don't do it in the fields before you bring it in the house. No, it was in the house after you brought them in. He never took Maaseh before he went on a boat. And the reason is because they're not yet brought into the house when he went on the boat. And Rabbi Gamliel didn't take any Maaseh in the field, but he took it in the house. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Shamala Minhacha. He learned from the following: your fruit is in the storehouse, and they're not taking Maaseh. V'nasan Sala ben Levi. You give a Sar to Levi for Maaseh Rishon, or Sala Ani, another Sar for a Maaseh Ani, to correct whatever is needed for the fruit over there. Now this is the fruits in the storehouse, which is normally in the house. It's in the house, and yet Maasros had not been taken. That tells me Maasros is taken from the house, not from the field. This stuff is already in the house. Now the Gemara brings a raya to the other side. No, maybe it's done in the field. He says in Vidim Maasros, Biati HaKodesh Min Habayis Zu Chala. The words Min Habayis is remez to Chala, which is taken from the dough. Hada Amra, this tells me the Chala is separated in the house, but maybe the other Maasros are Min Hasadeh, are done in the field. So basically we haven't got any proofs either way at the end of the day. Is Maasros done in the house? Is it done outside? We don't really. Whatever rise you want to bring, I bring rise the other way round. This Min Habayis here is a reference to Chala. That's the only one done in the house. There's no maskana, whether you take Maaseh in the field or the house. The Rambam seems to say, you bring in your house Mesukanim, he paskin, then usually the way is to do it in the field. The Rambam brings the Drosha Min Habayis Zu Chala. Okay, other Rishonim hold Maasros is taken in the house. Okay. Mishnah, yeah. Right, we're talking about you find fruit in the way. Matzah ketzitzas, you find figs that have been cut with a knife so that the juice should come out, and they've been put out in a field to dry out. Baderech, and you find them on the way. Afilu b'tzad today ketzitzas, even if you find them next to a field where they're full of figs that have been drying out. You have a fig tree which is planted in someone's domain and is leaning over into the street. The branches are going on the street. You find figs underneath it, right, in the street, underneath the fig tree, which is leaning from someone's garden. The figs, mutarais mishum gezel. There's no problem in taking them. You're allowed to take them for yourself. It's not stealing. There's no noticeable simon. We assume the owner has given up hope, right? So these figs are on the fig tree in the street. The tree is actually in the neighbor's garden, but the fact is, you assume the owner has given up. Right? There's no simon here, whatever it is. The Bavli talks about, you'll remember, in Bab Metzia, Kaf Aleph, about how the figs which are soft, as they fall, they get ruined, and they lose their appearance, and they're not like the figs in the tree. Therefore, maybe people think they never fell from the tree, they came from wayfarers coming on the journey, and they're hefker. Right, I don't know if you remember that.
Hefker's bottom of the Maaseh.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So we're saying there's no din gzeila here, and memela there's no din meiser. Now some say the het is not because of Yush, but because of hefka. The owner is mafkirit. As you find them getting ruined as they fall down. The owner obviously doesn't want them. And that's all very well with figs. Now they've fallen off the tree. They look a bit like the figs on the tree. When they start drying out, they already lose their natural appearance. So you don't even have a simon there from where they fell from. Okay? Paturais mina maser, as we said. Also potter from meiser, like hefka. Azeisim acharuvin. Olives and carobs, if you find them on the street, under the tree, they are asam shum gazel v'chayovin. And you do have to separate maser. The owner's not given up hope from what's fallen off. He's not mafkirit. They don't get ruined as they fall down from the tree. Everyone can tell which tree they came from. And they belong to the owner of the tree. They don't become hefka, they are chayav maser. You can't take it for yourself. Okay, So the pshat they're giving is because you can tell where they came from. And in one Matzia, there is another understanding, the difference between the olives and the figs. Abai Yerushalmi Das. Remember that? Whether the owner's given up before he knows about it, or do he know that they're going to fall, and therefore he knows that they're going to fall, and therefore he's miyash now. Okay, let's carry on. Now the first part of the Mishnah Torah spoke about these dried figs. They're not fully dry. Now we're talking about figs which are completely dry. Matzah grois, very dried figs. Most people have walked past them there. Oh no, most people would take these figs now and put them into their barrels. Remember how they put the figs in the barrels? So if most people would have done that by now, in other words, they're really Gemar Malacha, then you assume these ones are also Gemar Malacha before they were lost. And Chayev, the one who finds it, has to take Maaseh. Although they're Hefka, they're not hefka, they're not potter from Maasrot, because they were lost after the Gemar Malacha. They reached the stage of Gemar Malacha, therefore you need to take Maaseh. If, however, most people would not have put them in their barrels by now, then potter, you don't have to take Maaseh, because you assume they're not Gemar Malacha, and therefore they're potter as hefka. Now what about figs, where you made some sort of cake out of them? Masa pilche devela, pieces of a cake of figs, which have been pressed together. Chayev, you have to take Maaseh. They came from something which was complete. Now, we spoke about carobs in the first part of the Mishnah. Another din about the Gemar Malach of carobs, which is not really connected to someone who finds something. Haruvin, the carobs that you dry out on the top of your roof. Before you put them to the top of the roof to make this bundle there, like they do at the end of the drying season, you can take it down and give to your animals to eat. Or potter, you don't have to take Maaseh. Because after you've given the animal to eat, you'll take back whatever's left back to the roof to allow it to dry further. Therefore, the carobs are not considered Gemar Malacha, and they are permitted eating arai. Okay? Rav Yonah said, now we said if you find these dried figs on the way, and we're saying that they are hefka. That's the figs found on the road, that the owner has given up on them. He thinks, no one's going to return it to him. If they're found between his field and his friend's field, maybe something in between the two fields, there's a little empty space there, they're not hefka, because the owner of the field is not giving up hope. He knows his friend will find them and will return them to him. We said the olives and the carobs, if they're found on the road under their tree, they are chayav maaseh. That was said, you guess what? You find the olives under an olive tree. You find the carobs under, guess what? A carob tree. You find the olives under a carob tree. The carobs under the olive tree. This din was not said. So if they're not found under their tree, then they're permitted. There's no problem of guess out, right? If they're under some other tree, it's not a problem. So you find dried figs. Most people by then would have put them into their barrels. You have to take Maaseh. Now surely they take them and they press them in the houses. And if that's the case, most people, even though they're pressing the figs, but they're found in the road here between the fields, they're not in a house. We should say it's not yet being pressed. It's not Gemar Malacha. Because most people would press it in the house, you see, and this is nowhere near the house. So why does the Mishnah say you should assume that they've been pressed and they've reached Gemar Malacha? You know what? Most people do press their figs together in the fields. So that's what we're talking about in the case here. Where most people don't wait till they bring it in the house, they press them in the fields. Okay, now how can it be? You've got a question if they're found and they've been put, but have they been put in barrels? Can you not tell if he's been pressed together or not? Can you not tell? Surely you should be able to tell. Have they been pressed into a barrel? Can you not tell? You can see they're like the round shape or something like that. Sometimes it sort of jumps from under the wheel where they press them together. And it's pressed, but he nearest she'ena drusa. It appears like it's not been pressed. Some say the eagle is this round cake that they press the dates in. Sometimes it jumps out somehow. I don't know. I don't know how they explain it there, but it looks like it's pressed, but it looks like it's not pressed. And pa'amim, and there are times where they've not pressed it, but sharegel derasa, the foot presses it, but he eino drusa. It's not really pressed. And nearest kedrusa, and it looks like it has been pressed. So it seems you can't really tell from what you have in front of you. Now, Rabun Bachi explained our Mishnah where most people press them in the field. Another Moira argues, he said, most is not enough. You've told me that if most people have already pressed it, then they're Chaim Maisa, but that's where most people do it in the field. It must be, but Malcolm Shekulam. He said, that's not good enough. It's got to be Malcolm Shekulam Dosim Basol. It's got to be where everyone presses it in the fields. There's not even anyone who does it at home. There you can say, look, you find in the field, Chayiv Maisa. It's if only most people do it, but not all of them. Then, Oisan Hamilt, those few, Shadasim Babais, they press it in the house. And then you've got Oisan Hamilt, you've also got those few Hasidilidrais who are going to press but haven't pressed yet. Midstarfin, those two minorities join up. And they will pater the person on these figs which are found from Maaseh. So basically, there are those who do it in the house. So if the thing has fallen from them, they're potter because they've not been pressed yet, because they fell in the field. And then you've got also those who press in the field, but some of them are not yet pressed their figs together. So as far as these figs, they're less than Roiv who've already pressed it when they find it. So we can't assume there's a Gemar Malacha here, and therefore there's no Maaseh obligation. Do you understand? So you've got like two minorities together, making it an exemption. There's no obligation yet to take Maaseh. Okay, you got where we are? Here's to know, Tani, someone to learn that even the owner of the carobs himself, he can, now we said, if you bring carobs to the roof to dry them out, you're allowed to bring them, give them to your animals to eat, and without taking Maaseh. Right? The Mishnah says, the owner of the carobs, can he eat them without taking Maaseh? Why he can give his animals to eat? It is to know, Tani, someone to learn that that even he, the owner, can also eat from it. But Tani, our Mishnah didn't mention that. It's not very good for a scholar to start eating in public. Kahadar, like the following story, Rav Shimon, Haba B'shuk, is eating in the market. Harav say, Rameh story, Mamalei says, B'shuk Atachel, you're eating in the market, or Batal Garmei. And then Rav Shimon stopped eating. When he was told off, he stopped eating. Okay? Now, bringing fruit into the courtyard. Yeah, halacha gimel, yeah? Is kaver l'maaseh. And on condition that the courtyard is there to be kaver for maaseh, it's got to be a guarded courtyard. And we bring other opinions. What's considered a guarded courtyard? What is considered a guarded courtyard for Maasrot? Rabbi Yishmael said Chotzer Hatzuris, like the one in Sur. You can guard your vessels there through a guard at the entrance. Rabbi Akiva, he says, if one's got the right, one of the residents has got the right to open the door, and the other one's got the right to lock the door. So one can open, the other one can lock it. And when one locks it, the other one can come and open it. Petura. That's not kaver for Maaseh. But when only one of the people alone has that permission to open and close, to lock and unlock, then it's considered a guarded field, a guarded chotzer, is kaver Maaseh. He says, Kol, she ain't adam bosh, anything where a person is not embarrassed from eating in it. Chayeves, that's Kavel Maaseh. Rabbi Yossi Omi says, Kol shenichnas la, any courtyard where you can read in it, shenichnas la, the person can go in, no one's going to say to him, Ma ata mabakish, what are you doing here? So if someone can go in there, and no one's going to say, what are you doing here? Then that's not a guarded courtyard, right? And that's not Kavel Maaseh. Rabbi Yehuda said, if you have two courtyards, one within the other, and the inner one go to the street through the outer one, the inner courtyard is Chayav Maaseh, and the outer one is not. Hagago is Patur, the roofs are not Kavel Maaseh, even though they're of a structure which has a courtyard, they've got a guarded courtyard there, right? They belong to that building with a guarded courtyard, which is Kavel Maaseh, but the roof is not. Beis Shah is like a small gatehouse next to the gate of the courtyard. You've got a little guard there. But Sadra, or a roofed area in front of the entrance of the house, or Mirpeses, which is some sort of balcony on the length of the size of the house on the higher floors, and Re'elu Kachotzer. They've got a din like a chotzer, which is what they're next to. So im chayeves, if it's a courtyard which is obligated, then there's kavel maaseh, chayavim. Then they're chayav. In Patura, if the courtyard that they're connected to is not guarded, is not kavel maaseh, then also Paturim, they also are possible. You understand? So the gatehouse will depend on the courtyard that it's related to. So the roof is rishus in its own right. It's not secondary to the house or the courtyard. But the gatehouse or the balcony are dependent on the courtyard next to them. They have the din of the courtyard. Okay? Hatzarifin. Now other types of structures which is a temporary living, and we'll talk about their obligation for Maaseh. Hatzarifin, which is sort of made with wickerwork or willows, and it hasn't really got a roof. It's like slanty sort of thing, and like a chorot. Burganin, and whereas the sorts of things in the fields which are made just to store a bit of fruit. Which are sort of booths, which is for shade in the sun. Paturin, they're not kavel maaseh because they're not considered a proper fixed dwelling. They're not considered a house for maaseh. Sukkah kinisar, a sukkah, a booth, which you build in the gardens there in the summer. It's got a millstone and chickens for the people living there, and it looks like a fixed structure. Nevertheless, Patura is not Kavel Maaseh. Now we get Machlokas about something where people live in the summer. Is that considered a temporary dwelling or not? Sukkahs Hayotri, booth for those who make these earthenware vessels. Hapanimis, the inner one, which they're there all summer. Hayeves is Kavel Maaseh. That's a fixed structure. Vachitzayli, the outer one. Patura is Patur, that's not Kavel Maaseh. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Kol she'ena diras chama v'diras geshamim, if it's not used, both in the summer and in the rainy season, so they don't live there the whole year, Patura is not Kavel Maaseh. So even the Sukkah B'Yosrim, the inner one, they're not there in the winter, is not Kavel Maaseh. I bring a machlokes if Sukkah during Sukkot, is that a fixed abode, or is it a temporary abode? Right? Sukkah's Chag B'Chag, or Sukkah during Sukkot. Rabbi Yehuda Mechayev. Rabbi says, yes, you have to take Maaseh, because he holds his Diras Keva, and it's Kavel Maaseh. The Chachamim Poetry, the Chachamim exempt, because they hold Sukkah is Diras Arai. It's a temporary structure, and it's not Kavel Maaseh. Okay, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's got to be fitting to be a Diras Keva. Even though Sukkah Sachag, you're only there for 7 days, but it's got to be like a Diras Keva. It's like a house. It's Kavel Maaseh, the fruit that have gone in there. According to the Chachamim, it's not Kavel Maaseh, only the 7 days. They hold you don't have to build a sukkah as a Diras Keva. Okay, the Machlokes also is relevant with mezuzah as well. According to the Chachamim, it doesn't need a mezuzah. According to Yehuda, it is Chaim mezuzah. Okay. Ezo Yichotzer, what is a courtyard that obligates for Maaseh? So Rishma said like the one in Sur, where the vessels are guarded in it. We ring a price. It's only Rishma said, if you've got the guard standing at his sentry box there, with Meshama and he guards, is Kavel Maaseh. And that's Chatzet Suris, because they always used to have a guard. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, b'Shem Rabbi Yonason. Now, how guarded does it need to be? Let's see. Kula, in all the various Tanoim, we had different opinions as to what is a guarded courtyard, right? One says when one opens and one locks it. We have different opinions. He says, Kula, in all of them learn min abayis, from a house. Lamdu, they learn their views. So bayis, a house creates tevel, it's about Torah. And he says, Alabiyati HaKodesh min abayis. Chachamim Masakin, that house, is a courtyard like a house, is kaver l'masa. Because Machlokes in our Mishnah, how far does the courtyard need to be like the house? So Yishmael said it has to be that you've got to have a guard. Rabbi Akiva said it's who you've got different rights to lock the gate. Rabbi Nechemiah said if you can eat privately, and according to Rabbi Yossi, you can stop strangers coming in. It depends if someone comes in, would you say what you're doing here or not? So Shabbat and Kumer Yochanan, the Bnei Yeshiva heard people asking in front of Yochanan, who's the halacha like? And he says, halacha k'divrei kulan lahachmir. The halacha is like all of them to be strict. So even it's like one aspect, that's already enough, is kibbutz l'masa. But why didn't he quote names? He just said halacha is like all of them, because the halacha was not said clearly in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. The lesser milsa to Rabbi Yochanan b'liga milsa. But there was something that's not clear what Rabbi Yochanan was arguing. But we didn't want Rabbi Yochanan contradicting something he said elsewhere, so he didn't actually quote any names. Now the Gemara brings a brisa where another din was said, and it could be Rabbi Yochanan would conflict with this. So the brisa talks about Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah. Tani, we've learnt in a brisa, Shimon Lazayim Mishom Rabbi Akiva. If one of the people opens the gate, someone else locks it, Patura, it's not Kavana Masa. And that is only said Bishnei Shutvin, with two partners, and they live there with their houses. Below Bishnei Tiyurin, but not when two people who live in one courtyard and they don't really have a partnership in it. Okay? Ma ben Shutav, Ma ben Dia. What's the difference between partners in the courtyard? That means partners, owners, right? As opposed to different people hiring the place. Yeshem Shar Shutav Mamacher. Just like one partner can object to what the other one does. He can go and open it, close it. Kachadai, the other resident as well, Mamacher. The one who hires the tenants can also object amongst the other one who's locking and opening. So why does he say the courtyard of two sochrim is Kavana Masa? Arav Yona. Ravalabais with Diurei Masnisa. When the Brisa said, not with two residents, it means a case where there's a balabais, he has two houses in the courtyard, one he lives himself, the owner, the second one he hires to someone else. In this courtyard, balabais memacha lidei, the balabais, the owner of the courtyard, can object against the other guy who lives there and stop him having the right to open and to close. But the tenant can't object against what the balabais does. Okay, now the Gemara brings this words of Rabbi Yochanan, or said on that brisa, which seems to conflict what we said before. Alei on this brisa, Shaman kum Rabbi Yochanan, they heard the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha Shimon Elazar Rabbi Akiva. Halacha is like Shimon Elazar in the name of Rabbi Akiva, that it depends on one opening and one closing. This din goes against the early halacha where we said halacha is like all of them to be strict, and we don't know which is right. So we didn't say, therefore, this din clearly was Rabbi Yochanan's din. We didn't want to quote Rabbi Yochanan because it goes a bit against what we said before. Before we said any of these courtyards are kaveya. Now we're saying no. The halach is if one can lock and one can open, that's kaveya. So that's why we don't want to say that was Rabbi Yochanan because it may be a problem. Now we either bring other Amoraim who heard clearly from Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yoina, Zira, Rabbi Mitreim, they both said B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, halach Yishem ben Lazar Rabbi Akiva, in the name of Rabbi Akiva, which is again one opening and one closing. And Amr Rabbi Imi says, Hi Rabbi Yochanan Paskin, Ve'ilin Be Rabbi Ami, with Tamidim Yeshiva Rabbi Ami, halach Yishem ben Lazar Rabbi Akiva. Halacha is like Shimon Lazar's version in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, the Bavli brings Rabbi Yehuda said halacha like all of them lahachmir. Doesn't bring a daya passes like Rabbi Akiva. So Bavli doesn't pass like Rabbi Akiva. Here we pass like Rabbi Akiva. It seems this is the makor for the Rambam who passes divrei kulam lahachmir. In the Bavli, only Rabbi Yehuda said halacha divrei kulam lahachmir. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda said two courtyards, one within the other. The inner one is chayev, kaver l'masa. The outer one is patur. As we said in our Mishnah, the reason why the outer one is not kaver, because even the ones in the inner courtyard can open it to go in and out. Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, that if you have two people living there who can open and close, that's not Kaveh L'Maseh. Rabbi Yehuda by Kun Rav Zira. What's he adding on Rabbi Akiva's teacher? According to Rabbi Akiva, the same din is applying. What's Rabbi Yehuda adding? But Rav Zira said, no, he's not going to add on anything on Rabbi Akiva Klum. He's just bringing his own wording in a slightly different version. He's not actually adding anything as to what Rabbi Akiva said. Agagos B'Turin, the roofs are potel, although they belong to a certain courtyard, the roof is not Kaveh L'Maseh, right? Even though the courtyard underneath is Kaveh L'Maseh. Rabbi Lazar, we're talking about a case even where the roof is surrounded from all sides in the courtyard. Basically, you can't get your stuff into the roof unless you go through the courtyard. The roof is still not Chayav Maseh, even though you have to go through the courtyard to get to it. Why? Because Mekivan Shavir on Derech Chatzeh, now this is still the question. You have to go through the courtyard. Did it not become Tebel? Did you not have to take Maseh when you took it through the courtyard? Tifto, so we can answer either Ikrav Yesik Rabbi Yehuda, either we fit in our mission like Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that just passing through is not Kaveh for Maseh, right? And therefore the figs didn't stay in the courtyard, they're just going through to get to the roof, not Kaveh. Or, Ika Rebbe, we can talk about Mishnah, even like Rebbe, now he holds a courtyard just walking through obligates Maseh. But here the courtyard does not. Because we're talking about a case, you had the intention in the courtyard when you're taking them, to dry them on the roof and to leave them to dry. Then when you got to the roof, and you said, right, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to dry them now. I'm going to eat them as they are. But at the time when you went through the courtyard, your intention was to dry them. And they're not yet reached Gemar Malacha. So the courtyard was not Kaveh L'Maseh, because the courtyard can't be Kaveh before Gemar Malacha. You understand? So as it went through the courtyard, your intention was to keep drying them. So therefore the courtyard was not Kaveh L'Maseh. And now you get to the top, I changed my mind, I want to eat them. Fair enough. Now we said, the courtyard is not Kaveh L'Maseh because it's Rishus in its own right. It's not secondary to the courtyard below, the roof rather. The roof is not secondary to the courtyard. This din that the roof is a separate domain is Kishaher Begag, providing the roof had an area of 4x4 amas. Because but a house has to have 4x4 amas to be considered a house. Afagag and a poises, also roof cannot be considered a roof, a separate domain. Unless it is 4x4. Right? The Rishonim argue if you have an 8x2. Yes? The Rishonim argue on that. Is it Chaim Mezuzah or not? Has it got a din bias? Is it Chaim Mezuzah? 8x2, it's 16 square amas. Does it need to be 4x4? The Rosh holds if you don't have 4x4, it's not called a house. The Rambam argues. He says, no, it can be a house. Does the Rambam say with other dinim? Ma'akeh, Basi Arei Chaima. How far does the Rambam go? Alright. The Tani, we've learned in a brisa. By Shein by Abba Amos and Abba Amos. If you do not have 4x4, part of an Amzuzah. You don't take some Mezuzah. Mina Maki, you don't have to put Marker. Mina Eruv. You don't have to be involved in the Eruv. Ve'ena Taiva Masros. And it doesn't kaveh for Meiser. Ve'en Oisin Oisei Chibo Le'ir. It's not considered an extension of the town to extend the Tchum. It's not considered a proper house. If you forbade yourself to get benefit from a house, you can live in it. Because this thing is clearly, if it's less than 4x4, it's clearly not considered a house. The one who's got this sort of house, you don't give him a separate 4 amas in the courtyard for his loading and unloading, right? And if the house is in a city surrounded by walls, ain't samis b'yovel. It doesn't get sold permanently at the oval like the other houses, that don't go back to the owners. And it doesn't get saras on that house, but it's not a proper house. And if you build a house which hasn't got 4x4, and then the war starts, you don't get home because you've not consecrated your house, right? This is not considered a house. We said in our Mishnah, you still with me, Rabbi Sai? Still with me? Hatzrifin v'haborganim, these sort of little huts, they're not kaveh l'maseh, they're not fitting for a permanent living. Ma'al sheyitzbelu, Do they kavel a maser the balabrugin for the owner who lives there? He's always there. He's guarding his fruits and doing everything. Other people might not, but he's always there. Maybe they're not kavel a maser. We can work it out. Madatani buys Sefer, a house where they teach psukim, based Talmud, a house where they teach Mishnah. Tovlin, they create Tebel, the kavel a maser, la Sefer for the teacher, for the Mishnah, and for the teacher of the Mishnah. But not for other people who go in and bring their fruit there. Hadar, this tells me, Shehein Tovlin the Balaburganin, it is creating a Tebel status for the owner of these huts. He lives there much more. Only for other people it's not kavel. Okay? Now we said in our Mishnah, according to Yehuda, a sukkah during sukkahs needs to be diras keva. And it's kavel amasa. Now we bring a brayse, we bring Tanaim, who hold also that a sukkah has to be diras keva. Now we're going to see what sort of kaviyas do you need. So Rebbe said the shir of sukkah is arba amas 4x4. And then it's kasha afi she'en sham arba fanas, even though you don't have 4 walls. Rav Shimon Omer, he said it's kasha, it's got to be arba fanas, you're going to have 4 walls. Afi she'en sham arba amas, even you don't have 4x4 amas. Rabbi Yehuda said it's kasha, it's got to be an area of 16 arba amas, and it should also have, so it should be 4x4, and it should also have 4 walls, but arba fanas. Rabbi Yehuda also obligated mezuzah. According to him, it's got a din of a house. It's chayav mezuzah. Now, Mistabra, it's logical to say Rabbi Yehuda He'll agree to Rebbe and Rav Shimon that b'diavad it's kasher sukkah even if you've only got 4, if it's got either 4 walls or 16 amas. But in Rabbanan, the Chachamim la yadon Rabbi Yehuda. They will not agree to Rabbi Yehuda with Kriyas Maser and mezuzah. They hold even if it's 4x4. The Abba Nefanos and 4 walls. It's definite Diras Keva, but it's not called a house. Then it's Patum and Amazuzah, but ain't a Tevel Master. There'll be no Tevel, no Meiser obligation. And it's Patum and Amazuzah. Why? Because it's not a proper house. Yeah? It's not got the Shem of a house. They hold that this sukkah is not really a Diras Keva. It's not a fixed structure. You understand? It's temporary. Well, you say it's temporary, but other opinions say Rabbi Yehuda says you need to have Diras Arai. Rabbi Yehuda said you need a Diras Keva. Yeah. He holds the sukkah is a fixed structure. Yeah, but it's only 7x7 fucking. Well, this one is 4x4. He required 4. He required 4x4 amas. Yeah. He required it a bit bigger. He's not this 7x7 tefachim. Right? And Rabbi Yehuda's Mechayim Mezuzah, other Tanaim argue. They hold sukkahs diras keva, but they argue if a kriyas is a chazaka that's got a name of a bias. Yehuda holds this diras keva is 4x4, and it's got 4 walls. It's got a bias in every aspect. Rav Shimon holds even if you have these 2 conditions, it's not a house, so it's not kavel masa, it's not chayav mezuzah. Okay, right. Let's carry on. You ready to carry on? Yeah. Isha ta'ena shia medes chatzah. You've got a fig tree which is standing in the courtyard, which is kavel masa. So the fig tree is in the courtyard. You can eat achas one by one, or potter you don't have to take masa. But in sirif, if you put together in your hand 2 figs, chayav, you have to take masa. So you're already in the courtyard. Picking one by one, fair enough. You take 2, you're not eating them yet, 2 together, you have to take masa. Now here, these figs have grown in the courtyard. They never went through the entrance of the courtyard. Why are they chayv ma'aser when you put them together? Some say when they grow in the courtyard, they don't need to come through the doorway of the courtyard to be chayv ma'aser. When you detach them, it's as if they've gone through the doorway. Rav Shimon said even if you take 3 together, achas b'yamina, 1 in your right hand, achas b'shmona, 1 in your left hand, achas b'yamina, 1 in your mouth, they're not joined up. You're potter from taking ma'aser. You've got to put them in one hand. You climb up the fig tree. You reach the top of the tree. You can eat as much as you want. Because you're not in the floor of the courtyard. You're in the airspace of the courtyard. That's not considered like the courtyard. And if you put them in your clothes, they're not kavel ma'aser. You're not bringing them into the courtyard if you've not gone down from the top of the tree. So when at the top of the tree, it's not considered. Okay? even a bit, you climbed up a bit. You're not standing on the floor. Okay? Some say you have to go above the walls of the courtyard. Then you're out of the domain, the airspace of the courtyard. That's what some say. Okay. A vine is in the courtyard, and you've got clusters of grapes growing there. No teles kala eshkol. You can detach the whole cluster and eat from it. You don't take maser. V'chein barimon, same with the pomegranate. V'chein b'avatziach, the melon. Right? You can eat the whole thing. Divrei Reb Tarfon. Rabbi Kiva said, in order to stop maser, megarga b'eshkol. No, you detach one grape at a time. Or pirates karimon. You take one seed of the pomegranate at a time. V'soifes b'avatziach. You cut one piece from the melon while it's connected. And that way you can eat without taking maser. You mustn't put two rimons, two seeds, two pieces together. If you take the whole eshkol and pomegranate or the whole one, then even if you just put two from it, it's considered a siruf. So he says you have to take bit by bit, one grape at a time. Kuzba is usually coriander, is it? Which is sown in the courtyard. Mekatem, you can cut one leaf at a time and eat it. In siref, if you put two leaves together, chayav, you have to take maser before you eat it. Sia, what do they translate sia or not? Is it a safatida?
She favors penny royal.
Penny royal, right? Not the safatida. The ha'eziv and the hisab akornis. The cornis, I don't know if we know exactly the types of grasses. Savory. Sherbachadza, which grew of their own in the courtyard. If they were guarded, chayavin, you have to take separate maestros. Now we spoke about a fig tree growing in a courtyard, and what about a fig tree that part of it is within the courtyard? So it's standing in the courtyard, but and it's bending. The branches are bending into a garden which is outside the courtyard. So the din is, you can eat from the branches kedaka as normal, even two together, or plus you don't have to take maser. But if the fig tree is Omedes Begino standing in the garden, but Noita Lachazza bending over into the courtyard, you can only eat one bit. In Sirif, if you put them together, Chaim, you have to take maser. So we're saying now in the courtyard it is worse. But we're looking now as to where the branches are. No, we're now so far we've said it depends where the branches are. That's the main part. We're going to see in the Gemara discusses it.
So if you're standing in the courtyard and reach over into the garden.
Yeah, at the moment, so far we've just said, if the branches are in the garden, you can eat as normal. If it's standing in the garden, the branches are in the courtyard, you have to eat one by one. So we're saying where the branches are depends. And if the branches are in the courtyard, you eat one. Now, two other dinim which belong to a tree in one domain and the branches are in another. Omedes ba'aretz, the fig tree is on the ground. Well, yeah, usually it is. But the branches are going outside the land. Basically, the branches going outside Eretz Yisrael. All the other way around. Omedes b'chutz la'aretz, v'noita la'aretz is bending over. Everything follows the stump. If it's in Eretz Yisrael, you have to separate maestros. If it's chutz la'aretz, it's potter. The same thing with houses or fields which are in a city surrounded by a wall. They don't go back and yovel. If you've got a tree in a city surrounded by a wall, where the root is within the wall, then everything depends on where the stump is. Now in the last two dinim we learned that a tree is judged based on the stump. Now there's other dinim where we're machmir even on the branches as well. But are miklat, city of refuge. The tree is within the tchum of the city of refuge for the murderers. But the stump is planted within the city, and the branches are stretching beyond the city. Or the other way around. Now he's saying, with this, everything follows the branches. No, even the branches, and especially the root. So therefore, both of them. So therefore, if the stump is outside the town, but the branches are in, and this murderer is on the stump, which is outside, you still can't kill him. So we're makel, right? If either the stump is in, but the branches are out, and he's on the branches outside, we still can't kill him. So we're makel that both of them we say is considered in. Because the tree is judged also based on its branches which are within the city. And definitely if the stump is in the city and the branches are outside, and the murderer is at the stump. Sorry, the murderer is. 1 second. If the stump is within and the branches are outside, and he's on the branches, you mustn't kill him, because then, because then the tree is judged based on its stump, which is within the town. You understand? So we're looking at either the branches or the stump, and both of them would save the murderer. Yerushalmi, now we talk about fruit of Masechet now, which you can redeem it as long as you've not taken it to Yerushalmi. So everything follows the branches. So if the stump is outside Yerushalmi and the branches are inside the town, the fruit is there where the stump is, you mustn't redeem it, because the tree is judged based on the branches is judged within the town. You have to eat it, you can't redeem it. Therefore the fruit is considered as if it has already gone inside the town. Okay, now we said in our Mishnah, the one who gathers 2 figs from the tree which is in a courtyard, you put them together, Chaim Maisa. That's only when you gather the second fig close to the first gathering of the first fig. So it's as if you gather them together. But if you took a while after the first one, even if you put them together, then they're not Chaim Maisa. The Gemara says, it brings a brisa now. How close together they have to be in time. Tani Bulat. Nice and we give the gatherer shows a period of time between the cutting of the 2 figs, to start hitting a fig to soften it, first time, second time, third time. So during that period of time, it's considered still gathering the first one, because that time is needed to prepare for eating. After that period of time is gone, then that's the end of the first gathering, and then you gather a second one, it doesn't join up to the first one. Rabbi Yoida b'shem Rav Zira, he says, if you cut the second one within a short period of time of the first one, then mitzvah and they both become obligated for tevel, for Maisa. Rav Yirmiyah asked, oh, you love it. The typical Yerushalmi question this. You threw the first fig up in the air above 10 tvachim from the ground, and before it comes down again, you went and cut the second one while the first one is in the air. Is that considered joined together? Do they both become tevel now? Or maybe it's not a siruf, because when you cut the second one, the first one was not in the courtyard. It was in the airspace above 10 tvachim. Typical Yerushalmi question there, Rabbi Sai. And of course, we have no answer. Rav Shimon said, even if you gather 3 figs, and you hold 1 fig in your right hand, and 1 in your left, and 1 in your mouth, they don't join up. Not like the Tanna Kamma who holds any 2 all join up. Now, Rav Shimon, he says, even if you're holding shalosh b'mino, 3 in your right, 3 in your left, shalosh b'smolo, shalosh b'piv, 3 in your mouth, you don't join up. Why is that? Rav Shimon, since he used to eat a lot in one go. So he measured the eating gamei came for himself. So he always used to eat 3 in one go. So as far as he was concerned, 3 is like 1 for anyone else. So when you hold 3 in your right, 3 in your left, and 3 in your mouth, it's like holding 1 in your right, and 1 in your left, and 1 in your mouth. And they don't join up, based on Rav Shimon, who was the father of Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar of Shimon, he went to visit Rabbi Yossi Bar Lakunya, Chamoy, his father-in-law. He was pouring wine for him. He was drinking it in 1 gulp. He poured in wine, and he drank it in 1 gulp. He says, I'm sorry, because did you not hear from Shimon Yochai how many gulps you should have when you drink wine? He says, yeah, I heard. If it's not diluted with water at all, 1 gulp. If it was betzoinen, if it's diluted in cold water, 2. And in hot water, 3 gulps. But the Chachamim didn't really look at, not like your wine is so sweet, so easy to drink. Your cups are so small. Crazy in my stomach that can take so much. And that's why I drink a lot in 1 go. And that's why 3 times I drank the whole wine in 1 go, even though it was diluted in water. Yeshua ben Kacha cried on him, telling him off. Chala b'chamra, vinegar, son of wine, wicked man, son of righteous. This was the story. Now you remember in Masechet 83b, where Rabbi Elazar was the chief of police. And he was the one who gathered all the crooks, right? And he got all the crooks to be punished. And then the Gemara brings the following story. We tell you all Daf Yomi when you get to 83b that you should quote this Yerushalmi, right? Chalav Chavra, you Russia, what are you doing? You're giving over these people from Galam Jewish crooks to the Geisha people. Amalei says, Lama Sabachli came, why are you crying at me? Amalei, Yerushalmi Kacha said, I didn't manage to tell you off. Till you run away, far away, go to Ludkia, where you wouldn't be touched. You won't have to fulfill this obligation from the king. He says, I'm just cutting the thorns. These people I'm giving over are wicked. They need to be killed. What's the point that I'm helping them? What's the big deal? He says, you should have run away not to have to do this job. Those wicked who are going to die, you don't have to be involved. You should have laniach balagin and let the owner of the garden, so he can punish them himself. Now we said, Misgargala Meilah. I don't know how long you got. A few more lines. Misgargala Meilah. And we said, if you're is there two dots coming? We go to the two dots in the middle of Misgargala Meilah. So if you're eating from a fig one by one, you don't take maaser unless you're in the courtyard. Misgargala Meilah. So one rolled of its own accord, fell on the ground. Ma machazate. Can you put it back onto the tree and take it there and eat it, like you're eating one from the tree? Or do we say, no, it's fallen from the tree, it's reached the floor, it's Chaim Maisa. It won't help to put it back. So he says, like we say, when you have figs from your field, you want to bring them in the courtyard which is not guarded, and you forgot, you brought them in the house, you forgot. You send them back. But you can eat it without taking Maser. So he'll do the same thing. Things are rolled into the courtyard of its own accord. That's not considered kavel maser. You can take it back to the tree and eat it. The other one says no. Tamar, but marziran, but makom patur. You're taking all the figs back to a courtyard which is not guarded. But here marziran and makom chiyuv. You're returning them to a tree in the courtyard, which is an obligatory place. Now the Gemara brings another situation where we can learn the din. What would be a similar case? You're standing at the top of the tree, and it falls onto the ground, and you want to take it back to the top of the tree and eat it there. So that you can compare to the Brisa, because you're returning it to a Mokum Patur, as we learned in the Mishnah. Top of the tree is a separate domain, is not Chaim Maisa. Now, after we spoke about someone who's standing on the top of the tree, about Maasrot, what about mitzvah of Shikha? How do we judge your top of the tree as far as the mitzvah of forgetting produce? Is it Ka'omed Ba'ir? Is it like you're in the town? Or Ka'omed Basadeh, or you're still in the field? Yeva Kada, the difference can be, if it's like sitting in the standing on the field or the city, will be as far as Rose Dinim, which we're going to bring. If you are you're the owner of the field. If you're in the town when your workers are cutting stuff, Bamei says, I know what those workers are like. They're going to leave it behind. I left it in a certain place, they're going to forget it. But I know I've left it there. And guess what? They forgot it. That's not shikha, because you know you left it there intentionally. If you are in the field, but says, I know they're going to forget that I've left Mokum in a certain place, and they forgot it. I raise their shikha. Then that is shikha. And that's learned from the Chsiv. It says, in the field, and you'll forget. When you are in the field, that's when Dinei Shikha is Chal. But not when the Balabais is in the town, there's no Din Shikha. From this Brisa we learn, Shikha is not Chal until the Balabais is in the field, not in the town. Right? In the place outside to the field, it doesn't apply. So the Gemara has got a question, what about someone who's standing on a tree, which is in the field? Is it considered standing in the field? It's got Din Shikha or not? Very good question. We have no answer. Ad kan Tchum Shabbos.